Hello and welcome to another episode of Elaborate. I am sorry for the week dark, but it was sort of a dark week. Hey, I did a thing. I'm going to talk about some stuff. I don't have a guest with me today, but that's okay because I have a podcast. And on podcasts, you share shit about yourself. That's the point. Next week, I have an extra long, extra awesome episode with the incredibly talented filmmaker Chad Philip Peter. But today, I'm going to tell you a story. So, as I've said before, one of the points of me starting this podcast was to open the doors to create some more transparency between me and the outside world. I want to share stories. I want to tell anybody who is interested in listening what's going on with me. So it's been a rough week in the world of Jake Lloyd, hence why there was no show last week. I was doing a little bit of wallowing. I'm allowed, right? I mean, it's a free show. That's rude. I shouldn't say that. That makes it seem like I don't like doing this. I fucking love doing this, and I appreciate you listening. In any case, I want to tell you a little story. I want to tell you a story about, God, what is it? 2017 right now. So 13 years ago, I decided to leave New York, where I was a early 20s, doing nothing with my life, just dropped out of college, working at a music store, teaching guitar lessons and playing in incredibly mediocre bands. Can you be incredibly mediocre? By mediocre, can you then not be incredibly mediocre? I don't know. I decided to leave New York for the honest reason was originally for a girl, but it ended up just being because I just wanted to leave. And there was not, that didn't come without fear. I knew I wanted to leave. I was going to leave regardless. But the one thing that I knew was that I wanted a dog. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to leave home and go live in a place, Pensacola, Florida, by the way, for a reason that is a completely separate episode of me just telling a story. But in any case, that's where I was headed. I knew I wanted a dog. I wanted a companion. I felt like Mad Max, leaving home and entering the wasteland. And I was like, oh, I want dog with me. And so before I would moved, I was looking at petfinder.com and looking for dogs that were in the area of Pensacola. And nothing really jumped out at me. No little pooches sort of caught my eye. I figured, well, you know what? When I get down there, I'll worry about it. And so at this point, I'm 20, how old was I? 22, maybe 21. I can't remember. Driving down south by myself in a car loaded with all my shit. My little Mazda MX-3, this little teal, the Draven mobile, my cousin used to call it because I was at one point had very long hair and was lovingly addressed as Jake Draven, a la Eric Draven from The Crow. Yeah, not like a complete goth. I wasn't a goth. I was like a side goth. I was goth adjacent. In any case, I'm driving this little car. I'm doing the entire drive from Long Island, New York to Pensacola, Florida, all in one trip. I wasn't going to do any overnight stops. I was only stopping to get gas and to stretch my legs, to take a leak. But other than that, I was going to do the entire trip in one shot. I think it was 24 hours in total, or maybe 22, 23, somewhere in that range. And one of my stops that I took just to take a leak and stretch my legs was in Alabama somewhere. Alabama. And as I'm walking away from the gas station, right off of the highway in this sort of little podunk town, there is this kind of house that's in the first available street, and it's kind of offset off of the road a little bit. And the grass is fucking 3 feet tall. And I don't know if anybody lives there. I remember it was just sort of run down. It was a kind of white trashy, if I may say so. It's in Alabama. And I'm just walking through the neighborhood trying to stretch my legs. And I just noticed this house, and I was just like, wow, this is a scary block. And I probably shouldn't walk much further because I am a Yankee blue jean wearing motherfucker who is about to get touched. I notice in this yard of this house that's way offset in the back. And by the way, there's shit all over the patio. It was really trashy. I notice there are these dogs that are, like sort of in the grass and like in between the fence, like kind of in the corner. There was a wood fence that runs perpendicular to the road, and then a regular steel chain link fence that runs parallel to the road. And they were sort of up against the wood fence on the left side of the yard. And I walk over, and these dogs are just they are just worse for wear. I mean, one of them looks like it's gonna die any second. They all looked malnourished and just awful. They looked terrible. And so I sort of like walked along the fence and tried to get them to sort of like follow me to see if there was like, I don't know, to see if anybody lived here, just to scope this area. I walked all the way to like the end of the fence where this long driveway started. I took a few steps towards the driveway, and I realized, for the sake of maintaining a human form without a bullet hole in me, that maybe I shouldn't go any further. But still, these dogs were they looked terrible, and I felt the need to do something. So I decide I'm gonna like call somebody about these dogs, because I think these dogs are in trouble, and I don't think that they're being cared for. And I don't know what to do. I'm an idiot. I called 911, which was, the only thing I could think of doing, which in retrospect, don't call 911 for pets. There's a division, I found out, that you have to call the sheriff's department. And so they were like, call the local sheriffs. They gave me the number for the sheriffs, because I was all like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be calling. This is not really an emergency. I just don't know who to call. I found these dogs, and I want to know where animal control is. And the nice dispatch person told me to call the sheriff's department. I call the sheriff's department. They tell me that I have to call their like animal control division or whatever that was called. And this is back like before iPhones and shit like that. So I had this little flip phone, and I'm writing the numbers down like on my hand in a Sharpie that I had in the fucking car, which isn't that far, by the way. Like, two lots down from the gas station. And so I'm writing these numbers down, like 4 phone calls later, I finally get somebody who's incredibly kind, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll come out and we'll take a look and bring what we need to take the dogs or whatever, capture them, I think was the word that they used, capture the dogs. I was like, okay, great. I was like, do I wait for these people? At this point, I'm maybe 18 hours into my 20-something drive. I decide not to wait. But I do call them back and ask them what happens. Like, what happens to the dogs? And they tell me that there are a variety of shelters, but the most likely place they end up is the local, I can't remember the town. I want to say it's Ozark, Alabama. Does that sound like a town? I think it might have been Ozark, Alabama. But whatever it was, it's the local shelter. Every town has an animal shelter, and this is theirs. And most likely, if they get taken, they'll end up there. And so I get in my car and I finish my trip, and I get to where I'm going. I spend the first night in my giant apartment for $375 a month in Pensacola, Florida, in 2004 or 5. Ah, geez. Anyways, the next morning, I call that shelter, and I'm like, hey, I called yesterday about these dogs. I don't know if they were taken, what the deal was. And the woman is like, yes, actually, we got 3 animals that all came in yesterday that were the ones that I described. These 2 very small, maybe 10-pound dogs, and then one that was a little bit bigger, like a 30-pound terrier. Might have been like a bulldog terrier mix or something like that. I'm like, what happens to the dogs? I'm like, well, they need to see if they're healthy enough to be adopted out. If not, they'll be, euthanized. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do I go about seeing if maybe I can adopt one of these dogs if it's healthy? And they were sort of not inclined to aid me in this whatsoever, especially being that I wasn't local anymore. I was at this point, how many hours away, 5 or something like that. In any case, they took my information, like, well, we'll call you. I hang up the phone, and I sort of forget all about it. I go back on Pet Finder, and I'm trying to look for dogs now that I'm new fresh face in Pensacola, Florida, home of the Blue Angels, by the way. That was probably the only good thing about that place, was getting to watch the Blue Angels fly overhead at any given afternoon as they rehearsed. Did they rehearse the Blue Angels? I think they rehearse. I mean, they're putting on a show. They're rehearsing. I digress. So I want to say 8 weeks goes by, maybe 2 months. Maybe at this point now, it's sometime late February. I moved on January 1st. And I get this phone call from this like small dogs rescue. And they're like, we got your number from the shelter that we took animals from. They told us that we should call this number before making any final decisions with these dogs. And I thought that was so incredibly kind, assuming that I thought that they had no interest in helping me whatsoever at the shelter. It was explained to me that one of the dogs was too unhealthy to be saved, and so it was unfortunately did not make it. One of the other dogs was going to be kept by one of the people who worked at this small dogs rescue because it was like a real special needs dog. And then there was one that was going to be adopted, and they asked if I wanted that dog, and if so, if I would fill out their adoption forms. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Absolutely. So I filled out their forms, and I couldn't afford the fee. Luckily, my dear Aunt Sue, she's not really my aunt. She's my father's ex-wife. Listeners of the show know about my bizarre family upbringing. She was one of the coven, my sister's mother. Sue had given me an early birthday present of a crisp $100. I was going to say bill, but it was a check. I can't imagine she sent a bill in the mail. It was probably a check. And to this day, that is the greatest $100 I've ever received, because that $100 took care of the adoption fee for this animal. They informed me that these animals were being abused by the man who lived in that home with his girlfriend and girlfriend's son, and that the girlfriend would get dogs and that her son and he would abuse them and treat them like shit, and didn't let them come in the house, but she wanted them to come in the house, hence why they were like outside, and they were malnourished, and they were all sick in some way, shape, or form. And they also had other animals. They had like bunnies and shit like that, and crazy fucking shit, because the mother would just like animals, and then, it wouldn't go over well when they came home. So in any case, they okay me to get the dog, and I'm so excited. They do tell me that the dog that is going to end up being mine has issues with men and is incredibly skittish. Apparently, the woman who was fostering the dog said that he wouldn't really like her boyfriend coming near them, or just if the boyfriend entered the room and the dog was in that room, it would like hide under a table or a chair or something like that. It was just really petrified of men and generally sort of scared of everything. And so they were very like, hey, this might not work out. If it doesn't work out, just let us know. We'll take the dog back. We want to find it a good home. There was just a little bit of trepidation on their part, but I guess I had dibs, so they sort of felt like I just should get the dog. I don't know. For whatever reason, they went through with it and okayed me. And now, of course, the problem here was I'm now down in Pensacola, Florida, and the dog is up in Alabama. They were kind enough to meet me halfway. So I drove up on March 11th, and I went to pick up this dog, and I knew exactly what the dog's name was going to be before I even had it. They were calling him something stupid. They were calling him Devin. I don't know why. Who would call a dog Devin? It's the worst name. I don't even want that. If you're a human being with that name, I pity you, let alone a fucking awesome, cool little animal. I knew immediately Devin would be Cosmo, because I always wanted a dog named Cosmo. And they told me all about he probably doesn't like men. He's probably not going to be, it might be problematic. You just let us know. They opened the kennel where we met at like the side of a gas station with this little grassy park area. And Cosmo walked right up to me and just couldn't have been happier, and had a tongue hanging out, big smile, just a chipper little dog. He was super skinny, still a little bit malnourished, but he had been taken care of much better at this point. And the little dude just loved me right away. He walked right up to me, and he was just giving me kisses, and he was just, right from the get-go, he was just my dude. He was my dog. And the people were surprised because he hadn't been this way with any other men. Of course, I immediately cracked a joke about how womanly I was, and he probably just didn't know the difference. Yeah, right. That was it, man. That dog spent the entire drive home on my lap. He could not have been a cooler dog and more perfect for me. He was really skittish. They were right. He definitely was afraid of a lot of things. You can tell he was abused. The way that I combated that was that I immediately got a job when I moved down there, working at a bicycle shop called Bikes Plus on Creighton. If you're from Pensacola, go visit Bikes Plus, or don't. You know what? The owner was kind of a dick, so maybe don't visit them. Although I say that not knowing that the owner might have changed 5 times, and I could be calling a dick somebody who I don't even know at this point. When I worked there, the owner was kind of a dick. I was also a shitty employee, so I guess it's a two-way street. But that's besides the point. The way I would combat Cosmo's skittishness I would bring him to work with me, and it would sort of force him to just be around people and be around people walking around. And over the course of a couple months, he stopped being so afraid of everything, and he kind of just leveled out. And ever since then, Cosmo has been my dude. Anybody who knows me generally rarely thinks of me as an individual. Nobody ever thinks Jake Lloyd in their head. They always think Jake and Cosmo. Jake and Cosmo are the duo. It's hard to have one without the other, just like love and marriage. Jake and Cosmo, love and marriage. It's absolutely crazy to me to think about all of the factors that came into this dog ending up in my life between the day that I moved from New York and all the crazy reasons that I was leaving New York in the first place, which I didn't even get into. The fact that I stopped at that specific gas station because I was out of gas at that specific time and desired to stretch my legs on that specific street and saw that specific house, called those specific numbers and spoke to those specific people, and then ended up with that specific dog of the 3 dogs. It's absolutely insane to think of how unlikely it was that I was going to know what would become my favorite creature in all of existence and my absolute best friend. Just totally fucking random. I tell you that story to tell you this story. Unfortunately, like we all must do at some point, like millions of other people have done and will continue to do with their pets who they love like family. I had to say goodbye to Cosmo a week ago, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. Cosmo was a mystery, a fucking mystery. He was maybe 15, maybe 16, maybe 17, because when I got him, they had no idea how old he was. They said he was likely in between 1 and 4, which is an incredibly wide range to give me. All I know is that he gave me 13 incredible years. That dog lived in so many cities. He's driven across the country with me so many times. He has outlasted every single girl, with the exception of the current one, who I am so happy got to be his little dog mommy for 6 months. And the sort of sweetest sentiment that is sort of going around, that I will do the best not to cry as I tell you, was that, Cosmo's job on this earth was to take care of me. That dog came into my life at a point when I had no idea who I was, what I was doing, where I was headed, what I was supposed to do. And that dog got me through the worst of times, because even when shit was at its worst, at least Cosmo loved me. And at least there was Cosmo. And that was his job, and he did his job well, and he took care of me. And then I met her. And now that she is in my life, Cosmo's job was done. And he did what he had to do. And now he was passing the torch, so to speak. And that's sort of the sweet story that's being told and being accepted, definitely being accepted by me. But yeah, saying goodbye to him was absolute shit. But it was time. The end sort of began on Halloween. Halloween was an absolute nightmare. He just stopped being himself. He couldn't relax. The night prior to Halloween, he didn't sleep at all whatsoever. He was just constantly up, shifting, spinning around. He was so uncomfortable. He had a lot of problems. He had tumors that were likely cancerous, but he was at an age where even doing the diagnostics wasn't worth the intrusiveness of those diagnostics. So, it was the best decision to not do them and just to make him as happy and comfortable as he could be. He had pain medications that we were giving him. And he was, he was on borrowed time since August. And we thought in August that was the end of it. So 10 weeks he gave us of really incredible, typical Cosmo behavior. He was super happy. He was chipper. The ears were up. The tail was wagging. He was eating. He was pooping. He was sleeping. He was doing all his favorite things. He was being adorable. But anyways, on Halloween, he just wouldn't sleep. He couldn't get comfortable. I could tell his abdomen was bothering him. I'm assuming something inside of him was just not right. And all of Halloween, he just would not lay down or sit down even. He was just pacing and pacing, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. He was still eating and still interested in food, but he was not just not right. You could see his eyes were kind of not there. And they said in August that he might have suffered like a small stroke or seizure. We thought maybe that happened again. And so we just did the best that we could. On Halloween, we stayed in, obviously. We hung out with him. We tried to make him as comfortable as he could while we just sort of hung out and watched. We binged the season 2 of Stranger Things. A little disappointing. I felt like some of the charm was gone. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I did have a few things spoiled. Multiple people were just posting random spoilers on the internet, which was always fun. I was sitting there with my poor dying dog, upset, and then getting nerd raged over people posting spoilers. I get it. We all want to be included in the thing that's happening in pop culture, but you don't need to post anything. You can enjoy it without literally posting anything online. Like, that's allowed to not do anything. Okay. So there I am. I'm nerd raging while we're just doing the best we can for Kazi. He was just not right. And as the night progressed, it just became more evident. And we really felt like we were accepting what was going to happen. I was fucking hysterical crying as I was holding him, just desperate for him to relax and be comfortable. And he just wouldn't get comfortable. And we spent the entire evening pondering what to do, whether that was the night, whether we were going to give it another, because we couldn't put ourselves through another night of not sleeping. It's not only not good for him, but it was also awful for us. And as we sort of were coming to terms that this was it, that we were going to take him and that this was the end, I'm sitting there holding him crying. He finally fell asleep after being awake for 20 some odd hours. And it was just fantastic because he was sleeping. And so I just opted to not move at all whatsoever. I was not even in a comfortable position, but I didn't give a fuck. We both decided just to go to sleep, let him sleep. Maybe, just maybe, he'll wake up and it'll be better. And so he slept until, I want to say, fucking 3 o'clock the next day. I mean, he slept over 12 hours, whatever it was. He might have slept like 13, 14, to be honest with you. But he woke up the next day and he ate food. He was interested in food, which means we were able to give him his pills, his pain medication, which helps. And he was okay. I mean, he wasn't 100% again, and but he was definitely not as bad as Halloween. He was interested in food. He was able to relax and sleep for a longer period of time. He got a lot of rest that day. And we sort of fell into this way of being like, okay, maybe he's okay. Or just maybe we have a day, which at that point you take anything you can get. He didn't seem to be in pain. He was just poop and goop. He was gooping, as I called it. Sorry. I hope you're not eating right now. Just real, just viscous, just the worst. Whatever was inside of him just was not right. That went on for a couple days, and it didn't get better. He was, not as bad as he was on Halloween by any means, but it didn't get better. And he just stopped eating one day, just stopped being interested in all food. And when he's not eating anything and he won't open his mouth, you can't give him his pill. And the pills, tramadol, is what you give these pain meds for, dogs that have cancer and just any other really ailments. apparently it's like the worst tasting thing in the entire world. Like, why can't we do something about this? Like, apparently dogs hate tramadol more than any other thing in the world, any other chemical substance. It's the most disgusting and rancid thing to them, yet it is the thing that will make them not feel bad anymore. That is like the fucking most cruel joke you could play on these fucking animals. But in any case, when he's not eating, you can't give him that, and so therefore he can't relax. And he just didn't eat. And then without the pain meds came the inability to relax, and it just became evident that it was time. He let us know, like, this was it. Like, I fought through the bad night, and I hung out for as long as I could, and it was time. The poor guy was just miserable. So we knew that it was going to be his last day, and so we decided just to give him that day. And so we hung out all morning with him, and just sort of spent time with him in between his inability to relax. He was giving us small moments of comfort, and we were just holding him. Gave him a nice warm bath. We took him to the park. He got to walk around the park a little bit and get some fresh air. We went to McDonald's for some French fries, because French fries have always been Cosmo's favorite thing ever, but he can't have them ever because they're fucking terrible. He would snatch them up off the floor if one got dropped, and every now and then someone would sneak him one. I'd sneak him one. It's part of it. He's just so fucking cute. But even when he would not eat anything else, that little motherfucker ate some French fries. He still struggled a little bit, and it wasn't like all of a sudden we were like, he's eating, that's great. I just feel like it was more the fact that it was that. Tony and Paul, god damn it, you guys. Anybody who's listening to the show know about them. They're my two closest friends, both former guests of the show. I told them that it was his last day, and they allowed me to kind of have this nice little send-off for him. So we went over to Tony's house, and we just sort of spent a couple hours, not even, maybe it was only an hour and change, just kind of sitting outside on the stoop with them, just sort of hanging out with them. And Tony was always Cosmo's favorite person, I think because they were roughly the same age. They had the same speed. Cosmo, we used to call it the magic. If Cosmo got up next to you, he'd put the magic on you. You could not help but fall asleep. If you are in a remotely comfortable situation and Cosmo touches you, you're fucking out. That's it. And there are a few things that Tony enjoys more than a nice nap. So they got along quite well. So we were there hanging out, and fucking Paul Bianchi showed up, and he had with him these clay things. And he was like, when my mother's dog passed away, a friend of hers brought her these clay things, and so that she could make a paw imprint on the clay. That way you just sort of always have this little imprint of the paw. And oh my God, the second he said it, I just fucking bursted into tears. Both my girlfriend and I, just immediate. Paul is just the worst. It's just such an incredibly sweet gesture. And so we did that. And it was just really the best possible worst day of your life. And so we gave him an incredible send-off. We took him to VSV, the veterinary specialist of the Valley. I urge anybody who lives in the LA area, even if it's an hour drive, take your pets to the VSV. They are the greatest veterinary facility I have ever been in. And we said goodbye to him, and it was the hardest thing ever, but ultimately it was the right thing to do. And that's the story of Cosmo. I mean, obviously that's not the story of Cosmo. The story of Cosmo is 13 years long, and it features him in a wide variety of starring roles in fucking ridiculous web sketches, and I think he might be the most photographed dog of all time who's not like a celebrity dog. Although he has his own hashtag, by the way. If you're on Instagram and you want to see Cosmo, hashtag Constable of Cuteness. Hashtag Constable of Cuteness. And you will see all of Cosmo. I think one person tagged their dumb cat with that name. Other than that, every other photo is that of Cosmo. But yeah, it's It sucks. I thought I was ready like a couple years ago because he was so old. And man, you're not ready until it happens. And when it happens, it sucks, especially when that animal is so much a part of who you are. So much a part of my identity is that of myself with Cosmo. He has been my partner in crime for so long, and this rarely, and I can't think of anything I've done without this dog. He's just one of the most biggest constants in my adult life. Yeah, he's been with me for more than 2/3 of my entire existence. I remember having a conversation once with somebody who said they would never get a dog because they could never deal with having to lose the dog or put the dog down. And in the moment that it's happening, I'm like, yeah, fuck this. This is the worst thing ever. But, then days pass and you realize like, no, I can't wait to get another dog. I can't wait to start another journey like I had with another incredible companion. Dogs are just the fucking best, and Cosmo will never be replaced. He will never be topped. Let's be honest. That dog was fucking special. He was so unique and never had a single problem. Cosmo was never the type of dog who destroyed anything in 13 years. He never ruined anything in my house. He never barked unnecessarily. He never got into a fight with another dog. He never bit any people. The dog was just the most perfect, chill, awesome dog that has ever existed. So he will not be replaced ever by any means, but you've got to get another dog. It's totally worth it. Maybe if like right before you put the dog down, it all of a sudden started talking and was like, hey, by the way, I could talk this whole time and I wasn't talking. And you were like, wait, what the fuck? And then it was also like, by the way, I fucking hate you. And then it like flipped you off. And then it was like, I fucking shit in your boots right before we came to the vet. And then you put it down. Then maybe that would be not worth having the dog. Like maybe if that was the outcome, the dog was just like, by the way, fuck you. I hated you this whole time. And you're just like, why would you say that to me? I loved you. And then all of a sudden the dog was gone. Then maybe it would not be worth it. But still worth it. That dog was incredible. So thanks for listening to me chat about Cosmo. Cosmosis Jones, Dr. Cosmosis Jones, the Constable of Cuteness. He will never be forgotten. My absolute best friend. If you want to see just how chill Cosmo was, be sure to check out the Bored web series. It's sort of this anti-sketch show. People have compared it to like a live-action robot chicken because it's so just kind of quick and rapid and bizarre. You can find that at theboredwebseries.com. Cosmo's in every episode. He's usually just hanging out on the couch doing nothing, just being fucking cute. Also, there's 25 uninterrupted minutes of Cosmo Claus in front of a Yule log with Christmas music playing somewhere on YouTube. It's on the Three Principles YouTube page, but if you just follow at 3P Creative on Twitter, I will post it around Thanksgiving time, and you can have Cosmo on your TV in a Santa hat while you enjoy your Christmas dinners. And once again, Constable of Cuteness, hashtag Constable of Cuteness on all social media. And check out Kazi, because he was a really, really incredibly special dog.
It's Dragon Wagon.